Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer, and today I have Joe with me as we have both talked plenty about RX Vega for a very long time, so it's only fitting that we both give you our take on this. And Joe, time for some of that shameless promotion.
Well, obviously, I'm back to a degree here, guys. I was never really, as much as I said goodbye to the channel, I'm always here at Chris's disposal. I do have my own channel, though, for everybody who might not know about it. It is The Varangian. You can find it on YouTube. I'm on Twitch. I believe Chris will be able to put up a graphic for you where you can find me. So obviously, I am on YouTube, and it's not hard. Like I said, The Varangian. But I'm back, and I'm always going to be here as far as Chris may need me to comment on anything and everything he might want.
And starting next week, I'll be joining you on some of the live streams, play some Player Unknown Battlegrounds with you.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Can't wait for that.
Yeah, I'll finally have some free time. That's amazing.
I should point out, though, yeah, specifically that's what my channel's about. It's about live streaming. I play games. Where Chris does a lot of the tech, I'm more interested in the video game side, and I'll be doing a lot of streaming right now. It's a lot of PUBG, which is Player Unknown's Battlegrounds, but I've recently tried to stream Warhammer Total War, and had I not gotten destroyed on legendary difficulty, I would have streamed a little bit longer than I did. But the idea is that that's what you're going to get if you come to my channel: video games, news about video games, possibly, but mostly just streaming and me interacting with you via the stream.
Well, alrighty, guys. Like I said, this is kind of a big day. We've had the RX Vegas finally out. It's in the wild. We have the reviews, and overall, honestly, my expectations were pretty tempered from what we saw from Vega FE and pretty much just all the news leading up to this, pretty much since Vega FE came out. And so I wasn't expecting this thing to come out and just smash the 1080 Ti. I mean, there were hopes. We were all kind of hoping that it would.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that simply is not the case. The Vega 56 is clearly the more interesting of the two GPUs. But Joe, I've been kind of mulling this over while I was at work all day. But let me get your take on this.
Well, I think it's simple. It's like I said in that text to you. The bottom line is that it's just too late. It's not that it's a bad card necessarily. It's simply way too late to the market, to the game, whatever you want to call it, to really be of any impact or of any import. Generally, right now, even for the price points, you can maybe get a little better card as far as the 64 goes. But the 56 is definitely more interesting because at $399 it can compete with the 1070, which is generally found to be a little more expensive at this point. So that's great. But you're also looking at higher power draw and stuff if that matters to you. It doesn't really matter to me that much. But I would say in general, it's just too late. I mean, the 1070's been on the market for a year now, over a year. And we're just now getting a card that they've had 2 years to work on that they couldn't iron out to get any better than 1070 performance with the Vega 56 and barely 1080 performance with the Vega 64. It's too late and it's too little, unfortunately. Again, not bad cards, just not worth the wait.
Yeah, I mean, I agree overall. That's really the best summary for the card is it's just a little too late kind of a thing. It's really kind of interesting when you look at the compute performance. I sent those over to you. It does very well in compute and much better than it does in gaming, actually. And I did a video not too long ago where I was afraid that that's where GPU manufacturers are heading. They're heading more towards workstation and servers and AI, and that's really where their main focus is. And unfortunately, I think that happens to be the case because AMD doesn't have the resources to make 2 or 3 different types of GPUs. They could only make the one, and obviously they cut it down. Unlike NVIDIA, who has the GP100, that's their big mega professional GPU, and then they have the GP102, which is the cut down, stripped down version. So they basically have the gaming GPU, and then they have their workstation GPU. I think AMD only had the resources for one, and they chose to try to do the jack of all trades, but professional work was the more important facet of this, this card. And what I was kind of thinking on my ride home from work, Volta is technically already out in that market. I'm gonna let that sink in. Volta is already in consumers' hands. Now, granted, we're not talking about gaming level Volta. We're talking about professional $10,000 per card Volta, but it's already out. And it really kind of just hammered down the fact that how late AMD really is with this when you think about it like that. And I mean, the cards are going to be good. I mean, the performance is just fine. If you look at Battlefield 1, that's really surprising. You see the Vega 56 at
Yeah.
4K beating the 1080. So there's a lot of performance there. It's just completely unoptimized. And you did some research. You were just telling me about you found an article somewhere where they were saying a lot of the features aren't even active.
Yeah, so if you go to the computer base website, which is in German, so you'd have to translate it, they make up some very good points in the article, explaining that, number one, the primitive shaders are still not active in the drivers. And the primitive shaders, not that I can explain them to any great degree, but I understand it's a way of having the shaders basically automated so the developer doesn't have to mess with them. So they will just work intuitively with the game or the programming, which is pretty awesome. That's just flat not active. So I don't know that that's going to be a big performance impact, but it's there. The high bandwidth cache controller, which is really only important if you don't have enough VRAM, but that's still not active as it's supposed to be. It's not standard. And the draw stream binning rasterizer, which is basically tile-based rasterization. Am I wrong? That's their big improvement, just like Maxwell to Pascal, and it was activated last second with the drivers they gave for the review. But apparently they're not finished. So, and then that was a huge boost in performance from Maxwell to Pascal with their tile-based rasterization. So these are just some things that are kind of important, as well as the fact that the Infinity Fabric has its own clock speed, which Computer Base believes has a lot more room for improvement. So we all know that the Infinity Fabric, the faster that can run, the better the things. At least that's the way it works with Ryzen. It obviously works off the RAM speed, but
well, yeah, it's the interconnect. I mean,
right.
you add more latency anywhere into anything, it's going to perform worse. I mean, it's just the way that goes.
Exactly. So the faster it can work, obviously, the better. And basically, what Computer Base concluded was that it's just far from finished. Maybe this is another element or evidence of that AMD fine line technology, but the idea here that they're kind of giving out, which is, I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because whether it's finished or not, it doesn't matter in my mind. The product was shipped, so it should be a complete product ready to go. If they,
or at least like 90%. I mean, it feels almost like 50%. Like while you were talking, I mean, I'm running through all the benchmarks in my head. And, I mean, you're seeing performance below the GTX 1070 in some titles, in some instances. And then you're seeing it above the 1080 in some instances. And then you're seeing it below the Fury X in other instances. I mean, I don't even know how that's possible. I mean,
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, if you need any more proof that clearly something isn't working, when Fury X is beating Vega, I don't really know what else to say.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's a good thing that the card doesn't ship for another couple weeks, right?
Well, the 64s I thought were out today, and then
I thought the 56 didn't ship for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, the 56 I believe is on the 28th.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize the 64s were shipped already as well. But essentially, I mean, if the cards like the 56, which is what they were kind of front loading, there was stuff that came out that they were trying to tell reviewers to put more stock into that, considering how well it was competing against the 1070. But generally, given that the cards, at least the 56, are not coming out for another 2 weeks, I mean, maybe there's just enough time for them to get what they want into the card for the drivers to make it, in the hands of consumers. But they've done a lot of damage releasing it to reviewers not finished. I don't know.
This is basically how we felt when the Founders Edition came, Frontier Edition, whatever. When that thing came out.
The Fuck You Edition.
Yeah, the Fuck You Edition, when that came out, this is kind of how we felt. And everybody's like, oh, it's not for this and it's not for that and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I mean, I took it at face value. I knew it's the same chip. It's the same GPU. As I just explained, AMD doesn't have the resources to make multiple GPUs. So, I mean, yeah, the drivers really haven't improved much in, a few weeks here. And honestly, remember the Doom benchmark that they showed in January for CES, where it was like running a little bit faster than a 1080? Well, if we look at the actual benchmarks today, the performance is the same. So what happened between January and now? I mean, we're not seeing any increase. So there's a lot there that's clearly, I don't know. I honestly don't know what's happened. I mean, they had grand plans for this thing. They're talking about, twice the geometry throughput. They're talking, and we can see it in some games. Like I said, when you see the Vega 56 beating the GTX 1080, it's
Yeah.
like, oh shit, that is awesome. But then you see it losing to the Fury X, and it's like, what the hell?
It
So,
doesn't. Yeah, it really just kind of boggles the mind. There's obviously some sort of glaring flaw or software inequity that needs to be rectified, because you're right, like you said, AMD doesn't have the money to make all the different chips. So really, the only way they can make any great difference is to have the one chip, but then have their firmware kind of activate what's necessary for what they're going for. So if the tile-based rasterization is still not activated or optimized, if the high bandwidth control, like these are the kind of things that are going to make all the difference when it comes to gaming. And if they're simply just not ready, what the fuck is the point of putting the card out? To be blunt, why is the card being released?
I mean, the only thing that I can come up with is, obviously features may be disabled, but then why does it do so well in some titles? It seems to me like the software is really where the issue is. Maybe they overcomplicated the Vega architecture, with all the changes that they did to GCN to make it into NCU. Maybe they just made it so complicated that they literally have to optimize each game individually in the drivers, and maybe this is a long process. Like I said, Battlefield 1 runs well. Doom does run well, but it doesn't run any better now than it did back in January. So maybe they said, nope, that's good, move on to the next game.
But that's the point of the primitive shaders, though, which aren't active. The primitive shaders, you don't have to optimize per game. They will just work. That's the idea.
In theory.
So if they're not activated, and maybe that's part of the problem.
Perhaps.
Maybe they're shooting for the moon with some of these ideas. They can't make it ready by the time the card needs to be released. Because the businesses will do things for a lot of crazy reasons. Number one, they put out the FE probably just to meet their initial expectation of having to put a card out in H1. But perhaps at this point, the cards had to come out, or they could have been risking investor issues, things like that. Who knows? But whatever your reason, it doesn't matter. That's what I keep saying is these cards are being put out, reviewed as what appear to be. And this is just off the information we have, which is, again, all taken with a grain of salt. We all know the AMD fine wine thing isn't real, but it has seemingly been true over time that cards get better. And maybe this is just AMD's ways of doing things, and we just need to accept it. But the bottom line is the card's being put out and reviewed as a barely competitor to a 1070 or 1080, depending on which card you put, you looked at, and it is over a year behind these cards, and the price is good, but why the hell? I mean, people have been waiting for this card forever, and this is what we get. It's just not enough. Now you can say, hey, this card in 2 months' time, 3 months' time will be incredible because they will have worked the kinks out. I don't have that problem with NVIDIA. Not that I want to have NVIDIA. I mean, you and I talked at length repeatedly about how we wanted Vega, and we wanted it to do so well because we needed the parity in the market. We need prices to come back down from orbit. And here we are so much later. I buckled and bought my 1080 Ti, at which point right now I couldn't be happier that I didn't wait, in the sense, because I've been enjoying the performance of a 1080 Ti, which has been amazing out of the gate, and I didn't need to wait 2 months for it to get better. So that's just my thought. Like, you shouldn't have to do this. It needs to be ready at launch.
Right.
And yes, if its performance is better than the 1080, comparative with the 1080 Ti at launch, nobody'd be bitching right now. And hey, on top of that, a little bit of gravy for you, it'll even get better with the AMD fine wine bullshit. That would have been amazing. But we're not there. We're going to be, hopefully, this AMD fine wine crap is going to get us better than a 1080. We don't know that it'll get to a 1080 Ti.
Think about it. I mean, we don't know the real reason why they waited so long to release this card. But, as I keep bringing up, the Doom performance has not changed since they showed it in January. Clearly, Vega was complete at that point. So we all figure it's because they were waiting on HBM to become more readily available. Had they just said, screw HBM, let's use GDDR5, HBCC would not work. I'm assuming that's part of the reason why they're going with the HBM. So they wanted to make that happen. But okay, screw that, scrap it, throw it away, just kill it on the die. And what if they launched in Q1 or maybe even early Q2 of this year? I think that these cards would have been really good at these prices. Especially since it would have been about 9 months ish since the launch of the Pascal cards. But even still, I think that would have been an acceptable time frame for everybody. Maybe around when the 1080 Ti came out. Yeah, it's not a competitor, but the price point's real good. There are ways that these cards could have been sold a little bit better. But like I said, Volta is already out. How long do you really think it's going to be before NVIDIA says, well, here's the consumer version? Once the mining craze ends and NVIDIA's investors go, hey guys, you need to start making money like you did a couple years ago, they're going to come out with a new GPU. It doesn't even matter about competition anymore. NVIDIA needs to make their investors happy. So they have to come out with new GPUs every year and a half or so, regardless. AMD could be, still using the RX 580. They still have to come out with new GPUs that make you want to upgrade because their investors demand more money. That's the way business works.
Yeah.
So, competition isn't what's fueling them. It's the fact that their boss, the people that give them money and have invested in them, they're going to keep forcing the market forward. And I threw up some numbers. I went ahead and did Tech Power Up. They did 20 games in their review, and I averaged out all the games at 4K from the Fury X, the Vega 56, and the Vega 64. And I showed you, Joe, those numbers. And the performance gains, here, let me look it up because I don't have it memorized because I just did this. The gains on the Vega 56 overall in those 20 games is only 13.2% faster. And the Vega 64 is 27.6% faster overall if you average it out. And then I went ahead and looked at the clock speed increases on the Vega 56 and the Vega 64 over Fury X because I'm trying to see like how much better AMD is compared to AMD, even if we take NVIDIA out of the equation. And to achieve that 13% increase on the Vega 56, we're looking at 40.1% clock speed increase. To achieve that 27.6% overall increase on the Vega 64, it took 47.5% increase. And that's with the exact same shader core count. So that's the reason why TDP is nuts, because they had to push the clock speeds way higher than they should have because the core efficiency isn't there. It's not scaling properly. So that goes back to us just saying that this whole launch is just weird.
It is very weird. But, also, if you look at PC perspective, just for the fun of it, they compared the RX Vega Air to the Vega FE, and on average, 11% better at 1440p and 16% better at 2160p. So we had a lot of information based on the Vega FE, and we were told that the RX Vega would be better, and it appears that it is. But it's still not enough.
I think that's just driver update. I bet you Vega FE right now with these drivers will perform identically.
That's actually a good point. I'd have to check. I have no idea. I'm just looking at some basic information here. I didn't dig deep into it. I'm just seeing that, and it's interesting. I'm glad it got better, but this isn't what we needed. Bottom line.
No. Alrighty, guys. So now we've been pretty hard on AMD and Vega in this whole launch. But I'm not going to lie, the Vega 56 is still a compelling product. I mean, let's face it, you can't really find GTX 1070s. It is faster than a 1070 overall. Sometimes it's on par with the GTX 1080, and worst case scenario, it's basically on par with the 1070. So that's not a bad card considering they're priced basically the same. And the power consumption, for those of you that really are freaking out about, oh, Vega's power hungry, really isn't that bad. On average, during gaming, most of the websites saw about 30% more power usage on the Vega 56 over the 1070. Now, that's a little bit more than the TDP, but that's probably because they let the 1070s clock up a lot higher with GPU boost. And, of course, you can undervolt and do stuff like that on AMD cards, and we know that that makes it better. But to me, that's a halfway decent card if you can get it at the $399 price point or less. But like I said, with Volta looming, it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. The only real upside is FreeSync's a shit ton cheaper and works just as well. I have a G-Sync monitor now, and I have a FreeSync monitor now, and I'm going to do a video on that here soon. And, yeah, save the money on that one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think for $399, the Vega 56 is a solid option, especially if we have the idea that we might be getting better performance shortly, or not shortly, but in the next few months.
Eventually.
Yeah, you can look at it from a perspective of 399 eventually might get you 1080 level performance, which is great. You're taking a small gamble there, I think, because even if it doesn't work out at 399, sorry, 399 is still a pretty good price point. I can't justify the 599 price point of Vega 64 right now, and or even the
Well, it
you know the
should be 499 for the
499,
uncooled.
but there's a 599 liquid cool, which has got a higher clock point, so perhaps just a little more performance for you. But yeah, the Vega 56 I can definitely recommend in terms of product. I still think it needs to be better, and I think it will be. But I'm with you. I think the 56 maybe, but nothing else.
You got ghosts again, Joe?
No, it's just I'll be right out. But
The Janelle ghost.
yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Well, that's about all I got. I mean, some interesting numbers. It takes a crap ton of clock speeds to barely beat the Fury X. Clearly, something is wrong here. Hopefully, something is wrong. Otherwise, I honestly have no idea what the hell's going on with this. Doing these GPC tests, at least on the NVIDIA side, and I do have an AMD card now, and it kind of makes sense. Like, you can see the performance, and it all makes sense. This does not make any sense.
No, not one bit.
No. Well, alrighty, guys, that's about all I got. Joe, shamelessly promote, my friend.
I just want to say thanks for having me again back on the channel, Chris. I'm always here for you. And for those who maybe didn't see my video, if you want to find me, I am at the Varangian. In fact, I'll make sure there's a link in the description of this video for you. That way you can click to go to the channel. I'm on Twitch and Twitter and whatnot, which if Chris will put the graphic up again for me, it'll have that on there as well. There's also an invite to the Discord channel right there you can copy down, and you can jump on the Discord with us. So if you want to see games being streamed, that kind of stuff, info about games, possibly tech info, whatever, you can come on to the channel. Right now it's just going to be me streaming for the most part, possibly looking to expand in other ways, but that's it. That's the new channel. That's where I'm at. And like I said before, I'll be here anytime Chris would like my opinion or perspective on anything. I'm always available for the good old gamer.
And alrighty, guys, as per usual, if you like this kind of video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share with friends. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I know a lot of you guys are going to be disappointed. Like I said, at this point, I'm just shoulder shrugging because I don't know. I don't know what the hell's actually going on here. Hopefully, we get some more information. I'm going to be looking into getting a Vega 56 myself, hopefully here in the near future, and we can do some deep dives into that. But for now, you guys have a good night, and I will catch you in the next video.
Have a good night, guys.